UFC Vegas 23. Marvin Vettori versus Kevin Holland. A much better fight than I expected it to be. So these are the grapple tactics that I saw. So Kevin Holland looked like a different fighter, but Vettori showed good wrestling and he fought smart. Which is to say, he fought the fight where his opponent was weakest, in this case, the ground. Holland is a creative striker and has incredible speed. Like you heard the commentators say how fast he looked. It wasn't enough in this case. Going forward, I see Holland has two options, and I think he should work on both of them. He has to work on his takedown defense, and that's going to be the narrative of this fight. Everybody's going to be talking about this. As far as I'm concerned, this has at least three major components. The first one, stopping the initial shots. So Dominic Cruz and DC talked about this during the match. Down blocking, stuffing the head, etc. His hands were high and he was reacting late. The way he sprawled wasn't effective. I can't tell exactly what was wrong with it, but it could have been something to do with Marvin's strong posture, his straight back, and that he wasn't shooting super low to the ground where a sprawl would flatten him. The second component to takedown defense is defense in the clinch with the back against the fence, pummeling for underhooks, and making the switch. Making an angle with your hips so that you're not square against the fence. Widening your base, but also doing all of this early and during transitions, not waiting until you're up against the fence to start defending. A lot of the fence clinching happened after Vettori had already linked his hands and was in a dominant position. Probably he was catching his breath a little before he finally pulled Kevin's leg out from underneath him, but the truth is, Kevin was already pretty far gone at that point. Thirdly, Kevin was consistently able to get to his knees. That takes great awareness and timing to do. The wrestling defense he needs to expand on here is avoiding the mat return. And since he started standing up, in most cases, in the middle of the octagon, or at least several times during the match, in the middle of the octagon off of the fence, there is a great option here, and that's the Granby roll. He spent a lot of time during this match semi-inverted while on his back, which I'll talk about more later. So it wouldn't be at all a stretch for him to incorporate Granby rolls as a way to break the body lock. To most people, it might sound counterintuitive to spend all that energy to get back to your feet just to go back to the floor and do this roll. However, the roll doesn't take that much extra energy, and you're able to force a scramble. If you're trained at a particular technique, it isn't really a scramble. It just looks that way to other people. Another option you have there when somebody's behind you with a body lock is to work the Kimura grip, kind of like Sakuraba used to do. It's a threat your opponent has to respect. The chances of finishing it are small, but they have to think about it, and most likely it will end up breaking their grip. And it works well in combination with the Granby roll. But other than takedown defense, in my humble opinion, Kevin can and should be more dangerous off his back. He showed some great defensive jiu-jitsu, creating an angle, not staying flat, had really good guard recovery. He survived an arm triangle, I think maybe even two of them. The ability to get to his knees and stand up, that's not a trivial thing. Despite all of this, he wasn't able to turn the tide using offense from his back. Yes, he threw some elbows. Yes, he swept Marvin in the first round using that semi-inverted position which Silver Fox calls perpendicular guard. Yes, he was threatening an armbar from the same position, but there's a lot more potential there. Before I cover what I think his options are, I feel it's necessary to say, just in case it isn't obvious already, that Vettori did a great job overall of keeping Holland honest and stuck in some quote-unquote not terrible but definitely not good positions. He was aware of up kicks, hiding his head, tucking his chin. He waited for Kevin to stand up, and then he kind of broke his morale by taking him back right down again. I just didn't see anything in his game that particularly caught my eye, and that feels worth commenting on. Just a solid performance, in the ground and pound department at least. So back to Kevin's game. In full guard, Kevin was using his thighs to kick and create distance, as well as getting off his back and onto his hip. This immediately puts you in less danger of being hit, and it opens up offensive options. The perpendicular guard. In this position, the pendulum sweep and an armbar are two options that together form a dilemma. You go for one and the other one shows itself. However, with the fence stopping the guard player from completing the sweep, the armbar option becomes harder to pull off because it's the only threat. Marvin was mostly aware of this because you can see him keeping his elbow on Kevin's thigh in a couple of instances. I think Kevin needs to explore the options of getting to his knees from there by hooking behind the top guy's leg and completing the inversion. Rubber guard. Kevin has a lanky build with relatively long arms and legs. With those long limbs, rubber guard and specifically the dead orchard position could give him means of landing devastating elbows off his back. It's a position that makes it hard to retreat and near impossible to strike for the top guy. It also opens up routes to omoplatas and arm bars. I've already suggested that I know what Kevin needs to work on, and now I'm going to take it a step further and step into the realm of, okay, now you're reaching. Combining Kevin's jiu-jitsu and need for takedown defense, I think he should pull guard. By that I mean he should go with the takedown. Use double butterfly hooks to lift his opponent's hips off the ground. Get underneath their center of gravity. From there, you have things like single leg X sweeps. This won't work if he lets the opponent get a tight body lock on them first. You need to be able to use the momentum early on in the transition to fall to your back and roll them over, far beyond where they intended to go. Use their energy against them. The gentle art, all that stuff. Pulling guard when someone is in the process of taking you down, just like with Granby rolling, creates a scramble that isn't really a scramble if you've practiced it and are doing it deliberately. And there are other more fancy options like rolling omoplatas or flying omoplatas when they grab a single leg. Lastly, buggy choke. Kevin was in bottom half guard many times in the fight. He was able to stay on his hip and not get flattened out. Again, great job making the best of a bad situation. He was actually pushing his head into what would normally be the cross-face arm. This kept him safe from punches, but then he was riding it out, probably tired and waiting for a more obvious opening. But I wonder if anyone else saw what I saw. In bottom half guard, in pure grappling, your top arm is usually creating a frame across the collar to manage distance. But this is not a clinch. That only makes sense when there are no strikes. In MMA, that will very much be a transitional position. You wouldn't stick around there. Instead, Kevin allowed his head to be grabbed, which is a big no-no in jiu-jitsu, and brought his top arm over the back of Marvin's head. It was over the back of the head, reaching and very close to grabbing his own leg, where there would be the opportunity for a buggy choke. In order to get it, he would have to let Marvin pass the side control, which sounds like a horrible idea and a very bad trade-off. Which I guess it is, which is why I'm only half serious about this option. He's got the build for it. He's got the long arms, the long legs. We have seen buggy choke finishes in the past, but they're still pretty rare. But whenever they happen, I'm going to be right there pointing at the screen like Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Thanks for watching. This is the first video I've made of this kind. I hope this breakdown adds something to the conversation around MMA and grappling. I'm trying to approach MMA from a grappler's perspective, and if you enjoy that sort of thing, give it a like. I'll make a couple of more and see if it gets any traction, so definitely share it if you'd like me to make more of them. If there's anything you don't like about them, post a comment and I'll see what I can do about making it better.